In Peru, social movements continue to protest against the government of Dina Boluarte, calling for Congress to be shut down and for early elections. In Spain, after the election results of July 23rd, the president of the government, Pedro Sánchez, has called the last Council of Ministers before holidays. And teleSUR turns 18 years, taking a stand for the voiceless peoples, bringing forward the truth of Latin America and being the counterpart of the hegemonic narratives. Hello from the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba. This is from the south. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. The Argentine government announced on Monday that it will implement 4 economic measures linked to the dollar, the imports and taxes, after reaching a technical agreement in principle with the International Monetary Fund, the IMF. The measures will modify the value of the dollar for the series of foreign trade operations and for the purchase of dollars by savers. With these decisions, they intend to increase the central bank's reserves and increase the tax collection. Everything indicates that the measures will also impact the rate of inflation. Package of economic measures to tackle macroeconomic imbalances and meet its debt commitments with the aim of raising $2 billion. On the other hand, they claim that the fiscal package has the backing of the International Monetary Fund in the midst of the negotiation of a new technical agreement. In Peru, social movements continue to protest against the government of Dina Boluarte, calling for the Congress to be shut down and for early elections. Scores of demonstrators are departing from Puno and other regions towards Lima, the capital. The head of the movement in Juliaca, Ernesto Flores, said that at recent assemblies with other regional leaders, they have agreed to hold daily demonstrations in Lima, which could be extended till the 29th of July. Other than demanding the resignation of Dina Boluarte, demonstrators are also demanding justice for the 70 people killed and over 1,800 wounded at demonstrations held early this year, arising from the deposition by the Congress of the former constitutional president Pedro Castillo. In Ecuador, political violence deepens with less than a month to go before the next elections. This Sunday, the mayor of the town of Manta was assassinated after an armed attack. According to the reconstruction of the events, the mayor Agustín Intriago was coordinating a construction site in a sector when a subject shot 6 times in his direction. Local media reported that a woman was also killed during the attack. The attack takes place while the campaign for the first round of the presidential and legislative elections is advancing. In this regard, government authorities regret the death of the official. The residents of the community of Santa Marta, north of El Salvador, denounced a strong military deployment in the area, which coincides with social mobilizations in favor of the environment and against mining. Through those networks, social leaders and neighbors of the town in the province of Cabañas report a contingent of between 70 and 100 military personnel. The movement of Salvadoran armed forces began the occupation of Santa Marta on Saturday. Neighbors of the area report that they tried to enter the community house without success and expressed concern that no one has explained the reason for the presence. Environmental activists in the area have been heavily harassed in recent months by the authorities. And now we move on to other topics. In Greece, the environmental crisis worsens as the hours go by. Strong forest fires raise temperatures and force further evacuations. An urgent announcement from the emergency service calls the residents of several districts of the island of Corfu to evacuate immediately. While in the island of Rhodes, 30,000 people were evacuated. This Monday in Corfu, flames are dangerously close to urban centers. As a consequence, the sweltering temperatures have exceeded 40 degrees Celsius. The Greek Prime Minister, Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis, thanked the governments of Kordofania, Turkey and Egypt for sending firefighter equipment. And now let's take a short break. But remember, you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find the news in different formats, news, updates, and more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back. On Monday in Spain, with almost 90% of the total votes counted, the ruling party increases the chances of Pedro Sanchez's re-election, while the right wing, despite winning more votes, does not have a majority to govern. The Popular Party obtained the largest representation in the parliament, with more than 30% of the votes. However, the Socialist Party has almost the same amount of votes, while the Vox Party obtained the third place. In this sense, the party of Pedro Sanchez could be re-elected again by the parliament, while the right wing does not have much chance. The statistics registered an increase of 4 points of the participation rate in comparison to the elections of 2019, and in the case that none of the postulant parties obtains the 176 necessary votes, the elections will be repeated as occurred in 2015 and 2019. In this context, the Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez, has called on Monday the last Council of Ministers before the holiday break. On Tuesday, the Chief Executive will be at the head of the Council. Since it is now an acting government, some decisions are limited. For example, bills cannot be passed. This will be the last meeting of the body as it stands. When they meet again on August 17th, the courts of the new legislature should have already been constituted. However, and after what many analysts consider to be the triumph of pluralism, it remains to be seen whether there will be a deadlock that will force a repeat election. In this way, the Prime Minister of the Spanish government, Pedro Sanchez, reaffirmed the failure of the retrograde bloc that sought the country's regression.
I believe that Spain has been very clear. Spain and all its citizens who have voted have been crystal clear. The backward involutionist bloc that proposed a total repeal of all the progress we have achieved during the last 4 years has failed. It has failed.
Latin American presidents have expressed their opinions concerning the results of general elections in Spain this past Sunday. Colombian President Gustavo Petro took to Twitter to express, "Way to go, Spain, progressive forces are still in the fight." Meanwhile, Argentinian President Alberto Fernandez congratulated incumbent Pedro Sanchez from the Spanish government or the Spanish Socialist Workers' Party and called him dear friend. Although the Socialist Party came second with 122 seats, they have won 2 more parliament seats than in the last elections, and through an alliance, they still have a chance to form a new government. And millions of users familiar with Twitter's Bluebird will soon have to adapt to a simple capital X, the letter with which the owner of the social network, Elon Musk, intends to identify it. This is what the tycoon said this Sunday on the platform. In a message, he indicated that they will soon say goodbye to the Twitter brand and little by little to all the little birds. This year, the millionaire South African businessperson with U.S. and Canadian nationality launched an artificial intelligence company that he called XAI and then left him only with X. The owner of an aerospace company, a vehicle manufacturer, a laboratory that designs brain chips, and with plans to build a city in Texas, made the announcement of the change shortly after the birth of Threads, the new Meta social network seen as a rival to Twitter. And teleSUR English launches its own videos on demand site for you to go and revisit our interviews, the top stories, the special broadcastings, and more. Just go to the top left corner in our website homepage and click on the video option to access our VOD platform. And now we will have a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Ukraine insists on its onslaught against Crimea. On Monday, the Russian Ministry of Defense confirmed that it neutralized 17 drone attacks. The military report detailed that 14 Ukrainian drones were neutralized by the electronic means. 11 others crashed into the Black Sea and 3 failed on the peninsular territory. The attacks left no victims, no wounded. Earlier, the mayor of Crimea, Sergei Asyonov, reported that a drone had hit an ammunition depot in Daskoin district, damaging also a family residence in Kirovsky district. In Russia, President Vladimir Putin and his Belarusian counterpart, Alexander Lukashenko, met to discuss the Ukrainian conflict and Kyiv's failed counteroffensive. President Putin estimated that the irrecoverable losses of the Kyiv forces since the beginning of their counteroffensive already exceeded 26,000 people. Likewise, the Belarusian president stated that there is no Ukrainian counteroffensive, while the President Putin pointed out that there is a counteroffensive that failed. In Indonesia, at least 15 people died and 19 more remain missing after a ferry sank off the island of Sulawesi. Local authorities reported that 6 people were rescued and taken to a health center, while the bodies of 15 victims were handed over to their families. The leader of the local search and rescue agency of the city of Kindari, Muhammad Arafah, said that they are still looking for other 19 people. According to the authorities, there were 40 passengers on board of the ferry who were celebrating the anniversary of their hometown when it sank off the Indonesian island of Sulawesi. Israel's parliament on Monday moves ahead with a vote on Benjamin Netanyahu's proposed judicial reform that seeks to restrict the influence of the Supreme Court. During the legislative session, some opposition members said the judicial reform seeks to undermine Israel's democratic system and that the proposal under discussion aims to remove checks and balances on the executive, while the government argues that it needs to curb judicial overreach. Opposition leader Yair Lapid declared at the start of the debate that the law must be stopped if Israeli society is to continue to live in a Jewish and democratic state. The main aim of the judicial reform, according to Netanyahu's critics, is the search for impunity. While legislators met inside, protesters booed parliament, beat drums, blew horns, and chanted shame. Outside, under a burning sun, and mounted police tried to disperse them. And in this context, police forces repressed citizens in Israel who, for the first time in the country's parliamentary history, took over the parliament premises. Those who oppose the judicial reforms that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the orthodox and extreme right-wing forces that support him are trying to impose were brutally repressed around the Knesset, as the Israeli parliament is known. The protest groups claimed to have done what they had never done before, taking the 4 gates and blocking them, although they allowed the legislators to pass. An hour later, the police cordon attacked those present who were expelled from the building. And the Israeli occupying troops once again made illegal incursions into Palestinian territory. In the new onslaught, 13 residents of the Nur Shams refugee camp were injured. Around 60 military vehicles seized the West Bank city of Tulkarem and attacked the residents of the refugee camp with live ammunition. The Palestinian Health Ministry confirmed that 4 of the wounded were injured by bullets. Others have been hit by shrapnel. As is often in the case, Israeli troops delayed the medical assistance of ambulances. The causes of the new illegal incursion were not disclosed. Nine people, including 4 soldiers, were killed on Sunday night when a civilian plane crashed in Sudan for technical reasons. The military said the incident occurs as the war in that East African country entered its 100th day. In Port Sudan, the military said a child survived the crash of an Antonov plane in which 9 others were killed. Port Sudan Airport is the only airport still operating in the country due to the armed conflict. Since April 15th, fighting between the army led by Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and the paramilitary rapid support forces led by Mohammed Hamdan Daglo has killed more than 3,900 people, according to the latest balance sheet of the armed conflict location and Events Data Project. More than 2.2 million people have been internally displaced, mostly from Khartoum, the International Organization for Migration said in early July. And the fighting in Sudan has now been going on for 100 days, and the conflict has wrought a devastating human toll, reigniting ethnic violence and sparking fears it could destabilize the wider region. On April 15th, a rivalry between the army and the paramilitary rapid support forces, the RSF, exploded into war, turning Khartoum and wider areas of the capital into a bloody battlefield. Since then, fighting has also spread to the conflict-weary Darfur region, as well as parts of Kordofan and Blue Nile states. A flurry of diplomatic initiatives to halt the war has failed to yield any concrete results, as the rival sides are locked into a battle for survival, one that both think they can win outright without having to engage in meaningful negotiations. And teleSUR, the first Latin American and Caribbean multi-stage media company, is celebrating its 18th anniversary, amplifying the voice and image of the people of Latin America, the Caribbean, and the world. To face contemporary challenges, teleSUR is taking on technological improvements and new formats in its effort to amplify the stories that others prefer to keep quiet. Details in the following report.
A dream come true. To tell the story of the South with its own voice. The yearning of millions from Latin America and the Caribbean to be visible found in teleSUR the possibility of starring in stories that before would have been deliberately invisibilized by the corporate media.
In these 18 years, teleSUR has become a genuine expression of formerly invisible realities, telling the stories of nobodies of our continent and around the world. Realities that have been manipulated and hidden by the big media outlets.
teleSUR began as a television channel on July 24, 2005, at the initiative of Commanders Hugo Chavez and Fidel Castro. In tune with the challenges of the new times, it became an informative multimedia.
The fact that teleSUR signal is now 18 years old is basically the consolidation of what was once the dream of Commander Chavez, and that now allow us to be brothers and sisters and to take that sense of brotherhood to different parts of the world, from Africa to a good part of Europe. And it is not just about broadcasting an ideal, but all the cultural wealth that we have in Latin America and the Caribbean, and for that, without a doubt, teleSUR has been a key piece.
With more than 20 correspondents and collaborators around the world, teleSUR speaks the languages of our region. The public multi-state initiative with the greatest global impact in Latin America and the Caribbean reaches Europe, the Middle East, and Africa with its Spanish broadcasting service. With its English broadcasting service, it reaches the English-speaking Caribbean and Africa. It also distributes content for social networks in Portuguese.
My wish is that we continue to move forward, to go deeper, to advance more, to unify our work, which is the most important thing. And my wish is to continue to fulfill another 18 years of work.
In order to build its own communication agenda, this multimedia company maintains alliances, cooperation agreements, and collaborative journalism projects with media such as CGTN from China, Russia Today, Ispan TV from Iran, Al Majadim from Lebanon, and the television of the BRICS. It also provides high-quality content to broadcasters without production capacity for major global events.
teleSUR came to break some of that hegemony, and it came to build democracy, because when there is more than one version of a news event, it helps to create in the listener, in the viewer, a broader vision of the facts.
More than 600 workers of this multimedia company at its headquarters in Caracas, its production centers in Havana, Mexico, Quito, and in its offices around the world resisted during the last 5 years the impact of coercive measures against the member states.
My wish is that we continue to grow as people, as professionals. teleSUR has been seen as an opportunity for many countries that have been invisible. teleSUR has opened those windows.
The challenge now is to move from resistance to creative growth in order to multiply the informative strength of the multimedia, with emphasis on innovation and journalistic quality of its contents, formats, and platforms.
teleSUR has always been in a technological growth, and let's say in terms of its expansion. It is broadcasted around the world. This is not a secret that has been permanent. This new teleSUR studio, Studio D, digital studio, we have called it that. It is a studio that will produce podcasts in this case.
Thus, day by day, teleSUR makes history and tells it with the tune of diverse voices and images from the global south.
And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For telesur English, as always, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada Cruz. Thank you for watching.